Hi, I'm Anka from MedRise Studio, and this is the place to be to hear about the latest Web3 trends in healthcare. Today, we have an exceptional guest who will help us unravel the complexities of blockchain technology in the pharmaceutical industry. Joining us is Filippo Frangioni from the Nordic Blockchain Association and product manager at Novo Nordisk. Filippo brings a wealth of experience and insights into how blockchain can revolutionize pharma, and we are very thrilled to have him here today. Filippo, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for the intro, Anka. I'm very, very excited to be in the podcast.
We're so happy to have you because we're really curious about the intersection of blockchain and pharma. And to start things off, blockchain technology has been this very hot topic for over 8 years now, but we've seen limited adoption in the pharmaceutical industry. We have different reasons to explain that, things like regulatory hurdles, scalability issues, and also, we must admit, the very conservative nature of the industry. All of these may play a significant role in the low adoption that we've seen. But can you shed some light on why you believe the pharmaceutical sector has been quite slow to embrace blockchain and Web3 technology in general?
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. I've been in the pharma space for around 6 years right now, and I can tell you that pharma is generally not the first mover when it comes to emerging technologies, especially blockchain technology. We are experiencing a changing environment in the past few years. So we see the pharma sector moving towards a larger digital transformation phase. However, we won't be the first mover anytime soon, and this is due to the regulated environment that we're playing in. So in general, when it comes to emerging technologies, whether it's AI, augmented reality, digital twins, or blockchain, it is really important that we follow regulations, and then that we're entirely sure that we don't compromise on things like patient safety, for example, and we adhere to the different standards that we have to adhere to. So especially when it comes to Web3, and what I mean is distributed ledger technologies, it is even more tricky because quite often DLTs aim to disintermediate large players such as pharma companies. So of course, leaders in the pharmaceutical sector are even more skeptical because they see it on a lot of data. So they might be also a little bit afraid to embrace the change. So it is very, very important that those technologies are, or they will actually fit into the current system landscape, regulatory landscape, and so on.
So if I have to sum it up, do you believe that there is a contradiction between what blockchain can bring and the current regulatory framework in pharma, and this is the main reason why the two are not working very well together, if I understood correctly?
Well, in general, I would say, yeah, the two can play together, right? So I don't think that necessarily blockchain doesn't adhere to the standards. I think blockchain must be understood better because it does actually fit into many of the standards. And I would say in many cases, such as, for example, in clinical trials, it can actually support the standards built by regulators as it really enhances security and can also support traceability of data. So I would say that in general, it is more about understanding how these technologies can fit into the existing standards rather than seeing it as contradictory.
So let's dive into the potential use cases, because you've been mentioning some. You've talked about improving the integrity of clinical trials data. We've also seen it in improving supply chain transparency. So a lot of potential value in this industry. But in your opinion, what are the use cases that make most sense today, and what is the real value that they can bring to the industry? And I'm not talking to healthcare professionals or patients, because we've talked about those quite a lot, but to the industry.
Yeah, so from a pharma perspective, I would say the most relevant use cases are two: the clinical trial space and decentralized clinical trial space, and the supply chain space in terms of traceability and transparency of products. There's also a third area that is more upcoming, which is decentralized science, DeSci, but it is something that is not yet explored a lot by pharma companies. When it comes to decentralized clinical trials, pharma companies are already operating in this space. So they are doing remote monitoring of data, remote data collection, and recruiting of patients in a remote way, and also interactions with site study and stuff is being done virtually in many cases. So blockchain technology applied to decentralized clinical trial has a great potential for, I would say, mainly in two aspects. One is to ensure that the data is traceable. The data that is collected from patients during clinical trial is traceable, secure, and transparent. So, I mean, in general, regulators want that pharma companies ensure that the data is not tampered with, and that we can ensure that the pharma companies don't really interact and handle the data in a way that can affect the results that are going out to the clinical study reports that are submitted to the regulator. So in general, I think if you can have a proof that this data is not tampered with, this is just helping out the use case here. On top of that, another interesting aspect where blockchain can support is decentralized identifiers, or DIDs. A lot of blockchain companies are developing products for decentralized identities, and specifically for clinical trials and research in general. This could provide an incentive for patients to share their data even more. Having the patients to potentially own their data and understand better where their data is used can definitely be a help for them, but also for pharma companies to potentially understand where this data can be reused in further clinical trials. I can also talk a little bit about supply chain. That is also a very interesting case besides clinical trials. Product traceability, anti-counterfeit detection, definitely very, very high in the agenda of many pharma companies these days. So again, I mean, the use case in general, the technology helps in the same way, meaning providing a transparent and secure audit trail of data through a blockchain ledger. So ensuring that it is clear and transparent where this data flows, the product flow, basically from the production sites to the shipping hubs to the final patient, having an overview of this traceability is really important for pharma companies to ensure that the products land safely in the hand of patients and that patients don't consume counterfeit products.
So once we've identified that these are the use cases, the next step would be to launch either a proof of concept or a pilot project, just to do something and try to get your hands dirty a little bit and launch your first project. So do you have any advice on what steps need to be taken to initiate a project and to also successfully execute a blockchain project, which is not an easy task within the pharmaceutical industry?
Yeah, so in general here, talking from the receiver side, I would say it depends quite a lot on the use case, because you might have to deal with different type of people. And if you are in clinical research, it might be a little bit different from supply chain, for example. But I would say in general, what I've seen in the past is that a lot of the blockchain companies are focusing only on the technology, but they don't understand the real use case. So the first thing that I would recommend is to really understand why blockchain, and does blockchain really help in this situation? So offering a blockchain product without really understanding if blockchain is actually the solution doesn't work. And we have seen that both in the pharma industry, but also in larger enterprises in general. So I would say in general, really think about the problem at hand, and maybe sometimes don't even mention blockchain. Blockchain has been scaring people away in the past. Right now, the mindset is changing also from the pharma company perspective. But if you're solving the problem, you go ahead, right? But understand the problem is the basic thing, and that's one aspect. The other aspect that I will mention is to really understand the regulatory environment where we're playing. As I mentioned in the beginning of this call, pharma is very regulated. We have standards that we need to adhere to. So before jumping into a new project using a new emerging technology such as blockchain, we need to do due diligence, and we need to really assess whether this is something feasible from a regulatory perspective, and also if regulators are buying in and they would approve such a solution. So both from the product development perspective, but also from the regulatory perspective, I think it's key to work together with regulators and stakeholders around to make sure that we are adhering to the standards.
Would you add that an important aspect of managing a blockchain project is also working with other companies or other stakeholders in healthcare that are not necessarily regulatory because of the distributed nature of the project? And do you think that this is something that is taken into consideration and maybe is becoming a challenge, because pharmaceutical companies are not always the best at working with one another? We've seen collaboration coming in during COVID with a lot of pharma companies joining forces to create different products, but this is not something that is very natural to this industry. And a blockchain project kind of forces people to come together. And we know of examples of consortium that were created around many pharmaceutical companies coming together to operate a blockchain or to work on a blockchain application. How do you see that happening today?
Yeah, 100%. I think this is something we need to solve as an industry, not only in the pharma space. I mean, we see communities and associations driving blockchain use cases also in the banking sector or in the insurance sector. So when you have to deal with regulators and with legal implications, you need to have a united voice. So in the pharma space, it's the same. Whether it's supply chain or clinical trials, I see that playing with the other players in the industry is really key. Both, I would say, between pharma companies, but also collaborating between pharma companies or tech companies, and also potentially other different groups and research centers and universities is really important, both to stimulate the innovation within the pharma industry, but also to really incubate these use cases and bring it up to the regulators as one. So this is definitely the trend, and this is definitely the way to go forward, I would say.
And there's also a lot of people in pharma that are on an individual level interested in this topic, like you are, and you've been sort of championing this topic in your own company. Do you have some advice for the people that are like you in their company? Maybe they don't know if other people are interested in blockchain, but they're really supporters of the technology and the ecosystem. How can they transform their personal interest in a larger interest for the company?
Yeah, very hard question. Well, in general, I think it's important that you don't really stick only to your daily activities, and you continue to learn and you continue to educate yourself outside your main job, I would say. So personally, I'm part of Nordic Blockchain Association, where I'm seeing a lot of different perspectives from other industries, where I definitely see what's going on in banking. I see what's going on in other areas. And then I try to match it up with the pharma industry, where I'm actually working every day on a daily basis. So I see some similarities. Of course, it doesn't work necessarily every time, but bringing this outside perspective in definitely helps to challenge the status quo a little bit. Then when it comes to doing intrapreneurship in a way, or bringing emerging technologies up within a company, I would actually suggest to, of course, talk with peers that are working in the space, understand whether you have some people to spar with that maybe have a different perspective, And then, of course, I'm also a very big fan of communities. So an example could be to set up a community within your company to bring up use cases, to spar and to educate each other on the different use cases on a technology such as blockchain. So these are the way definitely to move things forward. Of course, after all, you need to get buy-in from senior leadership. So you might want to have the right person to fund your internal community as well.
There's another topic that I wanted to address with you is this, what seems like a war between Web3 and artificial intelligence. The reason I'm saying this is because when we've talked to some of our clients a couple of months ago, when we saw the emergence of generative AI and this huge tsunami that appeared, a lot of people were like, oh, we're putting aside our Web3 projects because the AI trend is coming and we're investing in that. And to me, it seemed like a lot of companies were feeling that they had to make a choice between AI and Web3. Whereas from the discussion that we'd previously had, I'm under the impression that AI and Web3 are just two tools that work really well together. And this is something that you've also been supporting and championing in your own company. Can you explain a bit more what convergence you see between these technologies and the value that you see at the intersection?
Yeah, this is not an easy answer at all, as blockchain and AI have two different hype curves at the moment. As you mentioned, a lot of builders and investors move from blockchain to AI because they have seen a lot more enterprise adoption. So, of course, AI speaking, AI has created a killer app, which is ChatGPT. So everyone wants to jump in now. However, as we know, AI has its limits, and we can see it in many cases, right? Recently, I was hearing yesterday actually that ChatGPT has recommended someone to eat 1 rock per day, and this is a clear example where you really need to understand what kind of source data you're feeding into these AI algorithms, and this is exactly where I think blockchain and AI can converge. So blockchain provides a secure and transparent way to process data, and I would say whenever it comes to building AI algorithms, it is really important to understand where the source data comes from. So having a traceability of this data on a ledger could definitely help to make AI more ethical and to really understand where this data comes from. So then it's up to people to assess whether they want to trust that data or not. Really important. So in general, AI ethics is a big thing. A lot of pharma companies and big enterprises are investing in AI, but they're starting to ask themselves, how can we actually regulate AI before we're going too far? And that's where I see the intersection really playing a pivotal role here.
So blockchain can address one of the pitfalls of artificial intelligence, especially when we talk about neural networks and deep learning, which is the sort of black box effect and lack of traceability and lack of explicability of these algorithms. It cannot solve 100% the problem, but it can bring some level of traceability and trust in this traceability, if I understood correctly. And so that's what makes them really interesting working together.
Yes, exactly. And this can be applied in many different areas, for example, in pharma, whether it's within clinical trial, recruitment, or supply chain, or even in scientific research, for example. So whenever AI algorithms are applied to generate some data, especially with Gen AI, blockchain can really be the safe corner to trust your data, basically.
Well, thank you so much, Filippo, for your time. It was great talking to you and going a layer deeper into this blockchain conversation, because I feel like once you get into the concepts and the use cases, the value appears quite clearly. And maybe lately we've been having this maybe quite superficial conversation about Web3. And maybe this is why we're also missing on some of the opportunities. The second we get a little bit deeper into the topic, the opportunities and the use cases just pop up again. And it was lovely talking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Anke.
That's it for today. Thank you so much for following us, and I'll see you soon for another Web3 adventure in healthcare.